Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Ballot. I'm your host, Norman Leahy. I'm a senior editor here at Ballotpedia, and once a month, we have the great privilege of having what is called office hours with our CEO and founder, Leslie Graves. Leslie, welcome back
Thanks.
to
It's
On
good
the
to be
Ballot.
here. Thanks.
And I want to pick up on a theme that we've
I-
talked about before. I think in a
oh,
previous issues, in an issue, print comes out when it wants to, but edition of On the Ballot, where we talked about things that Ballotpedia was be going to do in the new year. And one of those things reflects what's going to be going on nationwide next year, and that's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of American Independence. Now, we're not going to do the big things that some other groups are going to do, but what is it that Ballotpedia is going to do in this 250th
Yeah,
year?
thanks for asking. So 2026 is I think it's called the sesquicentennial. It's the 250th birthday of the 1776 Declaration of Independence. Um, and naturally enough, and this also happened in 1976 when it was the 200th. There are a lot of additional activities that year, and everybody gets in on it. And so in nonprofit world and in the media world and in corporate world and also the federal government and state governments, they're all planning special 250th activities. So you're just going to see a lot of that next year. And when I've heard a lot about various activities that people are going to have to sort of have these birthday celebrations for the 250th. And nearly all of it falls under the heading of what you would call civic education. So
Mhm.
all the nonprofits, left and right, state governments, Democratic and Republican and whatnot, feel an obligation to put on some special programming. That's understandable. And the special programming is nearly always going to be historical education, um, units of learning about um, the ideas of the revolution. What does the Declaration of Independence say? What does it mean? What are the predecessors of those ideas? Hey, does anybody know about what the separation? There's just going to be an untold amount of programming put out about that, which is great. We don't need to do that kind of programming. I'm sure I'll enjoy it and so forth. I will also just say this, I'm sure that a lot of teenagers and college students who are sort of, I think, expected to be the beneficiaries of that programming are are more worried about other things, but whether they're ever going to be able to buy a house and things like that. Um, but we're going to focus on a completely different aspect, and the aspect that I'm interested in, and that what Ballotpedia is really all about, is sort of doing the mechanics of educating voters. So we are not trying to educate voters about what the doctrine of separation of powers means, or what Thomas Jefferson was thinking, and when he penned that document, who George Washington is or what he was thinking. Lots of other people are going to do that. There's a part of a civic engagement that's completely separate from that, and that's what we're going to focus on. Do you want a little bit more detail in that?
Well, yeah, because yes, there's a lot of people who are going to be talking about
Mm,
the famous names, the famous
yeah,
battles, and the famous places,
yeah.
and that makes perfect sense. Me, as a child in
Mm.
1976, remembers the fireworks most of all. It was awesome. But what I think you're getting at is you're going to talk to me about the plumbing of democracy, the stuff that we take for granted that's in the
Like,
walls. It's behind, it's out of sight, but
I,
without it, nothing works. Is that what we're going to talk to
yeah,
people
yeah.
about?
I mean, I'll just give you three little stories that try to get at what I'm talking about, because one of them is that when I was growing up, one of the heroines of the revolution that was introduced to us as elementary school kids was a person named Molly Pitcher. I was always really attracted to her for some reason. It probably predicted my future adult life. Um, Molly Pitcher is actually probably a collective name for a lot of women that engaged in the following activity. They ran water out to soldiers who were fighting in various battles. So they're just performing a service function.
Mhm.
They are not fighting. Many of the women who kind of collectively came to be known as Molly pitchers for water, possibly couldn't read. I doubt that they sat up until 2 a.m. with in the taverns debating the big ideas about John
Mm.
Locke and the Scottish Enlightenment and how that all
Right.
ta turns into social compact theory. I don't Maybe they were. I wouldn't say that they weren't, but I just think they were just running water out to the soldiers because they observed that that was something that needed to happen. So that's one story. Another story is that many adults now have had some experience of 12-step programs of one kind or another. Um, One of the traditions of 12-step programs is a service component. And what they're talking about is that if you go to a 12-step meeting, somebody unfolded the folding chairs before the meeting and put them around the table. Somebody made the coffee and put out the styrofoam cups and the little creamers. Somebody did that. Um,
Yeah.
and then after the meeting was over, somebody collected the refuse, threw it away, put the coffee away, and unfolded and folded the chairs back up and put them away. Those are mechanics that need to happen for a 12-step program to actually occur. Um, then the third thing that really got me thinking about all of this is that we have an increasing number of volunteers who do wonderful, wonderful work for Ballotpedia. And an increasing number of them are high school or collegiate classes that work collectively on a volunteer project. And so we started getting feedback from them this year. This year, we will have had over 550 such volunteers
Mm.
who do about an average of about 20 hours of work for us. So great. Um, some of the notes that we started getting from them were, wow, this was the best civic education project I've ever worked on. And when I first started seeing those notes, I was like, what are we having the volunteers do? Are we having them watch videos of debates about social compact theory? Why are they saying that this was such an educational experience? So I inquired and tried to find out what were those people doing? What did you have them do?
Yeah.
Well, I was quite surprised initially to discover that most of them were looking online for email addresses for school board and city council candidates. Period. End of story.
Mhm.
And they thought
And
that was the best civic education they could have ever had, and I have 2 explanations for that, but you wanted to say something?
well, yeah, because finding an email address doesn't strike me as civic education at all. It strikes me as trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Well, when you do that work, you find out a lot about what it's like to be a voter, because for 35% of school board candidates and city council candidates, they have no online presence. So, a junior in college, when they set forth on the task, they absolutely believe at the beginning that they will find all these email addresses, and then when they can't, they're like, "What?" So, they view that as a significant learning about the which is kind of interesting, right? They feel that they learned something really significant in learning how difficult it is to get the information. But then they also think, "Wow, the poor voters." They understand that Ballotpedia is trying to get this so we can invite, candidates to fill out a survey so that our readers can learn enough about the candidates to, cast a vote that they feel like they know what they're doing. So, they're like, "Wow," "s somebody needs to do this." This is like I'm putting out the folding chair. Somebody needs to do this because it isn't being done, and the poor voters. And then I think the second part of it that is, why it feels like civic education is that it is something that you're doing to help other people.
Mm.
When you are consuming again, a video about social compact theory, well, maybe the contents of your brain changes because you watch a 22-minute video about that, but that doesn't help anybody else, right? Maybe
True.
eventually it would. I don't downplay that. I
Yeah.
went to a school where we read all the great books, and I mean, I love big ideas. I'm in favor of big ideas and talking about them and debating them, but when you are consuming information that illuminates the inside of your head about it, it isn't actually making life better in any kind of a direct way at all for your fellow citizens. So I think that our volunteers find it very compelling and exciting to be the hands that make it easier for their fellow citizens to vote. It is kind of exciting when you think about it.
Because essentially, I think what you're describing
Yeah.
is that they may have, from their political science professors,
Yeah.
an understanding of Aristotelian principles of government and
Or
civic
whatever
duty.
principles. Yeah. Yeah.
What we're doing is teaching them the last mile of democracy.
Y- yeah.
That most difficult thing that this is where democracy meets the people who make the decisions. And what they're finding is a lot of times in that last mile, the road's not paved, and sometimes there's no road at all, and they've
That,
gotta build
yeah.
it.
Right. So the candidates whose views we would like to share with our readers, and our readers would like to know what those views are. Those candidates, they got their views from somewhere, you know, that's great. Good for them. Our readers want to know what those views are. The last mile is taking the views of the candidate and matching them up to their many voters who want to know what they think about stuff.
Mhm.
So that is a tough, bloody slog, it turns out, that last mile.
And it's, one that we're going to be really putting a lot of resources into in 2026, correct?
Right. So as an organization, we're going to be, we hope to more than double the number of our volunteers who are so great. We just love them so much. So we'll add probably one staff person. We are going to be going from right now. We are able to give our readers comprehensive information about everybody on their ballot, no matter how tiny, all the way down to the bottom of the ballot in 26 states. At the end of 2026, we will have increased that to 32 states, and we're gonna be adding about 5 states a year until we're at all 50 states. But it's the volunteers and other parts of our programming that's gonna allow us to find significant information about what those candidates think and believe and plan to do if they get elected. That's
Uh,
that's what our readers wanna know. They just don't wanna know that Susie and Bob are on the ballot. They wanna know what Susie and Bob think about something. So that's the last mile.
yeah, and
Yeah.
somehow, tell me if I'm wrong, wasn't de Tocqueville talking about the little platoons of
Yeah.
democracy or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like Ballotpedia is very I want talk about a big idea, Tocquevillian in its approach to what we're doing here. We're s
Mhm.
we're mobilizing those people who make it happen, who really make it happen.
Yeah, there are some states that, not very many states, it's less than 5, that do a lot of work in the field of voter education. So they send like 200-page hardcover tomes to every registered voter that has all the information in it. That's not true in very many states, and that's also, as you can tell, that's pre-digital. So
Yes.
where what Ballotpedia is really doing is bringing that kind of voter education into the digital age where it is much more available to all, and really it's where people expect it to be. And why shouldn't they expect it to be there?
And, of course, this is all these are the goals that we've set out,
Mhm.
is to do this information, but, of course, to make it happen, we need those volunteers to show up.
Mhm.
How do you think it looks on that? You have told me, I think, offline that we could potentially have an even bigger class of volunteers than we've had in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah, we probably will have twice as many volunteers next year because, we have more people who wanna be volunteers than we have our staff able to greet them, onboard them, do all the things, you know? So actually, apparently, the people who run our volunteer program are not at all worried about vast numbers of people wanting to volunteer. It's just a question of, making sure that everything is ready, willing, and available for them to do their work.
Yeah, because we don't wanna throw them into the deep end and say, "See you in 6 months."
Right, and we're
That
also looking for, even though they are so wonderful that they will actually spend, some of them, hundreds of hours a year looking up email addresses for school board candidates, and, we also are building some more interesting and exciting things for them to do. So we still hope they'll do the look up the email addresses work, but we're gonna try to create some more fun stuff too.
Yeah, well, which is
Yeah,
an important thing, having been a
yeah,
volunteer.
yeah,
If you can have fun doing it, that
yeah.
makes all the difference.
But going back to the 250th, so we are gonna be creating, programming, so to speak, whatever, content for next year that talks about the fact that voting has mechanics. that there's plumbing, there's service-oriented work that needs to occur. This is one example, just one example of it that we've been talking about. Or no, you're not gonna be voting. There's a bunch of stuff that has to happen before one voter can show up somewhere and cast an informed vote. There's a lot of plumbing that needs to happen, and that's what we're gonna be focusing on.
And we'll be talking a lot about that, I am sure,
Yeah,
not only on the podcast with you, but
yeah,
in your column too, which we'll have more news about that
yeah.
in the next few weeks as well. So stay tuned for that. But Leslie, I know even though we're supposed to be in that lull between what election and New Year's, it's not been that way. And I know that you're as busy as everyone else at Ballotpedia. So I want to thank you for joining us on the ballot.
Could I just say one more thing?
Of course you can.
Okay. Well, 2 states have candidates who are gonna be on their ballot in November of 2026, actually a year from now. Their
Yeah.
filing deadlines are this December. So they have to get
Right.
they have to get themselves lined up and announce and do all that and file their appropriate paperwork with their state government if they're gonna be on the ballot a year from now. So it's already starting in December, and then the primaries start in March, and, basically we're off to the races.
Right. So, and it's another way to look at it. There is no
Yeah.
rest for the weary. But we'll be ready for it, and it's exciting, and I know everybody that watches and listens to this podcast has got that political junkie gene.
Yeah.
We're all excited for this to get going in 2026,
Yep.
and we look forward to talking about it more in the months and weeks and months ahead. So, Leslie, again, thank you
Hey,
for joining us
thanks.
on the
Thanks. It
ballot.
was great to talk with you.
And to everybody who's listening and watching this on YouTube, again, you get this anywhere you get podcasts, and of course, like I said, on YouTube. But until next time, I'm Norm Leahy, and I will see you in the digital pages of Ballotpedia. Take care.